I gotta say, Micah, Caleb, I appreciate you guys, coming in, rolling with me in this recording on such short notice.
Yeah, it's all good, man. Like I said earlier, thanks
really
for inviting us.
I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
And, by short notice, I mean a month ago when I asked you guys to do this.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
It's all good. Okay, let's start. Let's start. Hey everyone, I'm Ben, your underground conductor, and welcome to Underground Cinema. Today, I have Micah and Caleb Bailey. Say hi, guys.
Hello. Hi, guys.
This is going to be fun. So, you guys would be my fourth and fifth guest that I've had on Underground Cinema, and like all the other guests I've had so far, you guys have definitely had an influence on like how I've sort of evolved this concept, because obviously I started Underground Cinema as a streaming party after you guys graduated for the screenwriting club, and I just showed these weird niche B movies every week, and it sort of just evolved into this. And I'm really excited to have you guys here because both of you are extremely knowledgeable about movies. I remember when we were in college together, every time we watched a new film in class, Micah, you specifically, you were all like, "Oh yeah, I've seen this movie. I've seen Sexy Beast. I remember Sexy Beast."
Yeah, man. No, thank you once again for having me and my brother on, man. It's an honor to be here. I'm a fan of the episodes I have seen already, so thank you again.
Yeah, I just appreciate that you're even, you have this desire to like, hey, we need to review some movies for Black History Month. We need to really make sure that this actually centers our culture. And it's like, because it's weird. I don't know about you guys, but it kind of feels like if you go on YouTube right now, it's like they're not really focusing too much on this sort of thing. So it's like, it's nice to see that you're taking the reins on that.
Yeah, no, I had this idea sort of near the beginning of my channel, me starting it, because you sort of have to plan content ahead, and also like I figured it would just be a fun thing to do to cover movies that I'm interested in. And you're right, no one's doing it, and obviously people will say, oh, it's because of the political landscape right now, and I think that plays a factor, but also like no one talked about this beforehand, especially recently. I feel like people, like in terms of like Black celebration, I feel like more recently Juneteenth has been more popular than Black History Month.
Yeah, I agree actually.
Yeah.
We even got a Juneteenth horror movie a couple years ago, The Blackening.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out the same weekend as The Flash.
I don't know. I guess that's what happens when one holiday gives you the day off from work. So, I mean, either way, I'm really proud of the work that you're doing, man.
Thank you. I would have started doing this sooner. I made a joke in the first Black History Month video I did. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. It was Love and Basketball. I made a joke in that video saying that, oh, I'm mixed, so that's why I'm releasing the first video halfway through the month. I can only celebrate half the month.
That's pretty good.
In reality, I was just short on time.
Yeah.
It happens. But yeah, no, this will be the final video that I'm doing for Black History Month before I move on to something else that I'm really excited about. So I figured we'd end Black History Month strong by talking about, what is one of my favorite movies, Black Dynamite. Black Dynamite. Love this movie so much. Funny thing, I actually saw the television series first. I didn't know the movie existed until I think 2014. The show had aired on Adult Swim in 2012. It had 2 seasons, and I watched that. I fell in love with it, and then I found out about the movie after the fact because Adult Swim decided to air the movie. I think it was right before or right after season 2 ended.
Yeah.
So it's Black Dynamite is something special to me. Obviously, the show is how I got into it, but the movie is phenomenal, and it gets better every time I see it because I just keep noticing new things.
Yeah.
It's such a hilarious film. And I also talked I talked about Black Dynamite, in a bit of detail in my previous video on Dolomite, which at time of recording I have not released yet. I'm going to release it before this one. But, obviously Black Dynamite takes influence from several different blaxploitation films of the era. Dolomite is obviously a huge influence. So is Foxy Brown, Shaft, Superfly, The Mac. Sort of all these films sort of swirled together and it created Black Dynamite. And also another influence singularly was also the movie Willie Dynamite. Of course, they only took one thing from Willie Dynamite, just one thing, and it was the pimp council scene. Yeah, you could see that. So so I'm really excited to cover this in detail. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to dissect with Black Dynamite because it does a lot. It's a stuffed movie, but I enjoy it. Now, obviously, you guys have seen some of my videos, so what I typically do is that I start with a synopsis of the film, and then we get into the critiques of it. It's funny though because Black Dynamite has kind of a convoluted plot from the start. So the way the movie begins, I'm doing this for the viewers. The way the movie begins, we start by seeing basically what I presume is some sort of drug bust or drug trade operation, and we get introduced to the character of Jimmy Dynamite, the brother of the main character. And after rewatching the film, I realized, Jimmy is named after Jimmy from Dolomite, who's the nephew of Dolomite. It's very entertaining. But so this big crime lord comes up and he's like, "Oh yeah, one of you is a Judas. Who is it?" And then Jimmy starts talking in a weird British accent. And it's very clear that he is the one who is he's undercover. And I actually watched the film commentary for the movie after I rewatched it. And apparently the reason he's speaking with a weird British accent is that's a commentary on the fact that a lot of blaxploitation films had classically trained British actors in them, or classically trained theater actors, and they would just sound like that, which that's hilarious. But anyway, Jimmy gets caught, they shoot him, and then a policeman shows up and he's like, God damn it, do you know whose brother this was? The black community's got to turn into a war zone. We have to be on guard for Black Dynamite, and we see Black Dynamite having sex with three different stars. I checked. Almost every female actor in this movie is a star, by the way. Almost all of them.
Go figure.
Yeah, because you have to get attractive women who are willing to put themselves in those situations. There's one way to do it.
Yeah, it's smart.
It is smart. I mean, it sort of reminds me about how, in the Boondock Saints, one of the main actors in that movie is a star.
A word in Boondock Saints. I'm
trying
to think who it is. Because
I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but it's the underboss. It's Ron Jeremy. The actor's name is Ron Jeremy. He has the thick mustache and the long hair. He looks like a chubby Italian.
Yeah, Ron Jeremy. Wow.
Yeah, Ron Jeremy, real star, which is hilarious. Yeah. Anyway, Black Dynamite starts driving down the street and he answers a phone in his car. He has a phone in his car, which, to be fair, that was a thing. It was in the 80s.
Yeah.
The 80s. But this is the 70s. He has a rotary phone in his car. And that should be one of the first indications to any viewer that this is meant to be a comedy. It's meant to be funny.
Yeah.
It's so hilarious. Anyway, he's going to collect on some money that's owed to him by this John. He then kicks down the door of an apartment on an old woman. He kicks the John through the wall. He collects the money. He goes back. He goes back to see his top mistress, Honeybee. And Honeybee is very clearly inspired by Queen Bee from Dolomite. Very clearly. They even have that weird continuity error with the close-up where you see Honeybee crying, like she has a single tear coming on her face, but then in the next cut she doesn't have that tear. That's a reference to the opening scene of Dolomite when they're in the prison. like because they have that weird continuity error where she's crying and then she's not crying and then she's crying again, which yeah. Anyway, we then pivot to Black Dynamite doing some kung fu, which, you know, very Black Belt Jones, Enter the Dragon, etc., etc. And he gets a call. He gets a call from his aunt, and his aunt says, "Oh yeah, your brother's dead. Your brother who you were supposed to look out for, he's dead. Your brother's dead." And his aunt starts just bugging him. It's very much that stereotype in like old 70s and 80s movies where like a wrongful death has occurred and then an old black woman just like starts chastising you and saying, "You gotta avenge this boy. You gotta do it. You gotta avenge this boy. You were supposed to look out for him. You gotta avenge him." Anyway, he then tries to hang up the phone without looking. I'm not sure if you guys noticed that. It's really long, extended scene. He's just, what's going on here? I can't do it. I can't do it. That was a mistake. Michael J. White just tried to hang it out without looking, and he just went with it. And they used that take for the film. Anywho, he then meets up with like an old CIA buddy, you know, that I used to know, and the CIA buddy's like, "You better not get involved with this Black Dynamite. You don't have your license to kill anymore. You can't go rogue. You can't do a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible. You can't go rogue this time." And Black Dynamite's like, "I remember when I was in Vietnam." It's like, wait, what? Why are you talking about that? "I remember when I was in Vietnam, the Chinese jungles of Vietnam, and I came across that kid who got his little Chinese legs blown off on the ceiling fan." And I'm like, and he's like, he looked at me with his little Chinese eyes and he said a question. He said, "Buku Sao." He said, "Buku Sao," which and I understood it as a question. I didn't speak no Chinese, but I understood it as a question. He was asking, "Why, Black Dynamite? Why?" Turns out Buku Sao is Vietnamese for "you're full of shit."
Is that very appropriate considering the scene?
Considering the scene, yeah, he's full of shit. And they also call the character, the little kid who gets his legs blown off, they call him Buku Sao in the Black Dynamite animated series. They call him Buku Sao when they come across him again in that Mr. T episode. Where Mr. T is eating Vietnamese people with homemade barbecue sauce.
Yeah, I remember.
Yep, everyone. Yep. This is going to be a lot of me referencing things that happen in the show that they also like do in this movie, by the way. Anyway, he goes to see his best friend Bullhorn, who's clearly modeled off of Rudy Ray Moore. Very clearly. Bullhorn says, "Oh, Black Dynamite, I'm so sorry about your brother. You know, that little half a pimp Cream Corn might know something." And, he goes to see Cream Corn, and Cream Corn's very clearly based on Antonio Fargas from Foxy Brown. Just sort of a skinny dipshit who's, like, very Weasley. And then Cream Corn diverts Black Dynamite to, like, another guy named Chicago Wind, and then they have a car chase. It's like a whole thing. It's a chain of events. It's just a chain of events happening. And after he comes across Chicago Wind, I think we take a break from the narrative a little bit, and that's where we meet the love interest in the film, Laura. And, she's campaigning against a congressman named, I think is it Senator Richards, I think? Is it Senator Richardson?
I'd have to see it again. It's been way too long. I do think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah. So, obviously, he's a corrupt politician. Apparently, on set, they kept on referring to him as Blackula because he had a widow's peak. Or maybe it was Count Chocula. They called him something that was vampire-esque. But watching the film, I looked at the guy, I'm like, this looks like a black version of Nixon.
Blackula makes more sense, all things considered.
Blackula does make more sense, all things considered. Like, but looking at his face, I'm like, he has like the round, like chin, like bulbous nose. He looks like a black version of Nixon. And I think that was unintentional, but it just makes things funnier. Black Dynamite then starts flirting with the character of Laura, who I'm pretty sure is based off of like Foxy Brown, Pam Grier's character. And, he's flirting with her, and she's like, where's the smile? And he's like, I am smiling. I am smiling. He just has that permanent scowl. And it's like, I am smiling. Which, do you guys remember seeing Dune Part 1?
You said Dune Part 1?
Yeah, Dune Part 1.
I didn't see it.
You didn't see it? No. So, okay, so I want to explain this because I think it's funny. In Dune Part 1, near the beginning of the film, there's a scene where the character Gurney Halleck, played by the guy that played Thanos. He was also in The Goonies.
Oh, Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin plays a character named Gurney Halleck, and the Emperor is coming to see the Atreides, And Duke Atreides says to Gurney Halleck, smile, Gurney. And Gurney says, I am smiling. I'm 100% sure that that's a reference to this. I'm 100% certain about that because I've not heard that particular joke in any other film or show. I'm 100% sure that that's a reference to this.
It could be a Batman reference.
Oh, yeah, because Batman also has a permanent scowl.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm just saying. Like, I picked up on that immediately, and I'm like, I wonder if Denis Villeneuve saw Black Dynamite in 2009.
Almost certainly.
He probably did, yeah. It's possible.
Yeah. It is possible. Like, maybe he saw it, like, in between making, like, I don't know, Sicario or something else. Anywho, the plot gets kind of convoluted as it continues, and that's intentional. There's sort of unraveling mysteries here. Black Dynamite is sort of searching around, trying to figure out where a particular bullet came from that was found at the scene of his brother's murder. And he goes to see some black revolutionaries. And he gets in a small confrontation with them. They resolve it almost immediately. And, he talks to the main revolutionary, like the main Panther, and he's like, what is this bullet? What is this? And the Panther tells him, oh, this is government issue. We could use this in the fight against the man. And I'm just going to keep laughing because the movie just gets funnier as it goes. He goes to see his old friend at the CIA, and he's like, what was my brother in for? And the CIA guy's like, oh, yeah, your brother, he wasn't a two-bit drug peddler. He was one of us. He was doing this. By the way, Black Dynamite, I reinstated your license to kill, even though this will cause great issue for me later in the film when there's a big twist. So Black Dynamite goes on a little bit of a rampage, like a montage rampage, where he just tears everything apart. And during this montage, and I laughed for longer than the character did, he takes a helicopter, and he hovers the magnet of the helicopter over the car of the main drug guy, and then he lifts the car up, and then he drops off a cliff. And they replay the shot from earlier in the movie from the different car chase with Chicago Wind. It's the exact same shot. They just replay it. Where he drops the car off a cliff, and he laughs all the way into the next scene of the movie when he goes back to the Revolutionary Den. And I laughed longer than the character did during this entire sequence. I can't get over it. I can't get over it. Anyway, they eventually raid a warehouse where they think some drugs are, and they kill everyone except for one guy to interrogate. And the guy that they interrogate is actually an actor from the original Dolomite. He played one of the racist cops in Dolomite, the guy that they inject the truth serum with. He's racist cop number one. He's the one that doesn't look like Matt Stone from South Park. And he just starts muttering shit about Operation Kansas and shrinking all the. They don't know what it means, so they search the warehouse and they find Anaconda malt liquor, which was foreshadowed earlier in the film with a commercial that I feel personally was supposed to be a reference to the old Colt 45 commercials, with Billy D. Williams. It's like, Colt 45 works every time. I feel like the commercial was meant to be a reference to those, but they find the malt liquor, and they're like, what is this? And one of the guys starts drinking the malt liquor. It's like, oh, well, it's government approved, and it tastes great. They're confused, so they go eat, and they go to Roscoe's to eat. And we saw Roscoe's earlier in the movie. Roscoe's was chili and donuts. And Roscoe's like, I can't do chili and donuts anymore. What do I do now? And someone in the background says, well, we have waffles and we have leftover chicken from last night if you want that. And Roscoe's like, I got it. It's like, very subtle way to avoid a lawsuit. Good job. Anyway, then the characters play 14 degrees of separation. Because one character says, melt in your mouth. And it's like, what? Melt in your mouth? Wait a minute. What else melts in your mouth? They just go down a chain of events. It's like, okay, Mars Candy Company, Mars God of War, Ares is the half-brother of Athena, Athens, Athena has another half-brother who's like the god of medicine, who has a staff that's made out of snake. They go down a chain of logic that leads them to Anaconda malt liquor. And then they remember the Anaconda malt liquor slogan. Anaconda malt liquor makes you go, woo, woo. And it's like, oh, who else goes, woo? It's Little Richard. And it's like, wait, what's another word for Little Richard? And then they go check on the guy from earlier. Turns out the malt liquor was designed to shrink dicks. It was designed to make small dicks, to just cripple the black community. And they're like, dude, do you want to live on? Do you want to live on? Tell me, do you want to live on? And they shoot him, and they're like, they've gone too far. They go back to the warehouse. Black Dynamite runs into his buddy, who reinstated his license to kill. His buddy's like, and then Black Dynamite fakes getting shot to shoot him. And then the movie completely turns on its head and becomes even more hilarious as we find out that a classic kung fu villain has entered the plot, fiendish Dr. Wu. And they start speaking Mandarin at each other because apparently Black Dynamite knows Mandarin. And I did not look this up, but I know this for a fact because Michael J. White confirmed it. What you see in the film in the subtitles is not actually what they're saying to each other in Mandarin. It's supposed to be a bunch of dirty jokes.
Naturally.
I don't know exactly what they said, but that's like an inside joke in the film that you would only know if you knew Mandarin. So they go to Kung Fu Island, actually Kung Fu Island, and they face off against fiendish Dr. Wu. And then one of the guys who was giving Black Dynamite a hard time earlier, he foreshadows his own death. He's like, when I get home, I'm gonna finally settle down with my girl. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then he gets stabbed with a spear. And Michael J. White's all like, "Who saw that coming? I mean, who saw where that came from?" And then they all point in one direction, and them pointing in that direction, that's a reference to the MLK assassination pose when they were trying to point at the shooter. Like if you look at the original photo of the MLK assassination, there's a bunch of people standing over his dead body pointing the left-facing direction. Like that's meant to be a reference to that, which is hilarious. They then have a kung fu fight that's pretty well choreographed, very reminiscent of like Jim Kelly, which obviously was one of the core inspirations of the Black Dynamite character, Jim Kelly. And, I brought up throughout the synopsis, like, the different references to characters in this film. And obviously it's observably true if you are familiar with the characters in these blaxploitation films, but it's also confirmed by the creators, both in the film's commentary and also in the animated series. There's an episode of the Black Dynamite animated series where Melvin Van Peebles, famous blaxploitation director who made Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, he, in that episode, he's making another blaxploitation film based on Black Dynamite's life. And they casted the characters, they casted Black Dynamite as Jim Kelly, they casted Bullhorn as Rudy Ray Moore, and they casted Creamcorn as Antonio Fagas. The only one that's an anachronism is Pam Grier. They cast Pam Grier as Honeybee, even though Honeybee is not based on Pam Grier. Honeybee is based on Lady Reed's character, Queen Bee. But it's like, Queen Bee isn't popular enough. Who was that famous blaxploitation actress in the 70s? Diana Ross? No, the other one. Pam Grier? Yeah, Pam Grier. So yeah, that's the situation that we're in. All these characters are just references to other things. Anyway, we get a final fight between Black Dynamite and Dr. Wu. Dr. Wu runs away. Dr. Wu tells another guy to keep an eye out, and he keeps an eye out. Black Dynamite then goes into, to fully confront Dr. Wu, and, a boomerang flies through the window, and it cuts off Dr. Wu's arm, and Black Dynamite just steps up over him, and he's like, "Ha! I threw that shit before I walked in the room! And I don't know about you guys. I tried to look. Did you guys check to see when he actually threw the boomerang?
Nope. But it's still one of those things to where it's like, it doesn't make sense for us, but it does make sense for the movie. So I'm just going to run with it.
No, I rolled with it because I thought it was hilarious. I just wanted to see if there was a moment, and maybe a deleted scene. Who knows? Yeah. I haven't seen deleted scenes. It might be a deleted scene for all I know. But I wanted to see if there was a moment where he actually threw something because, in the cartoon, there's that O.J. Simpson episode where he's on the moon and he throws a rock from the moon.
Yeah.
And he's like, you O.J. Simpson. And then at the end of the episode, the rock actually hits O.J. Simpson on Earth. He's like, "Ha! I threw that shit before I left the moon." So it's like there's a moment in the cartoon. I just wanted to see if there was a moment here. It doesn't affect the film. I was just curious if you guys noticed because I couldn't find it.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, Black Dynamite starts interrogating Fiendish Dr. Wu. And Fiendish Dr. Wu's like, the government's been trying to build a bigger penis for years. Then we discovered a chemical that does the opposite. It shrinks the penis into the size of a 2-month-old snapping turtle. And Black Dynamite's like, I know who's behind this. Then he sets Dr. Wu on fire, and he takes Cream Corn, who's the only one who's still alive because everyone else has died. And he's like, Cream Corn, we gotta go to the White House. He goes all the way to the top. And Cream Corn's like, look, Black Dynamite, it's the honky house. Then Black Dynamite jumps out of the helicopter right before the Secret Service blow it up, and he's like, Cream Corn, no! In front of a very obvious rear projection, which there was a lot of rear projection in this movie. Like, I'm not sure if you guys noticed that, like, particularly in car scenes. Just, it's great. He then, like, goes through a bunch of the Secret Service guys, and one of the extras in that fight scene is an actor who was killed, like, 6 times in this movie in different action scenes. Mm-hmm. Like, he just keeps showing up, and Black Dynamite keeps shooting him. Just can't die. Mm-hmm. He then gets to the White House, and he's like, I knew it was you, tricky dick. Like, he changes first, and then he goes to confront Nixon. And then Nixon's like, Black Dynamite. Black Dynamite was a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this. And he pulls out some nunchucks, and he just starts doing some karate with Black Dynamite. Just start doing some karate. They fight throughout the White House. They end up in the Lincoln bedroom, and Nixon pulls out a gun on him. The gun that John Wilkes Booth used to shoot Lincoln. And then the ghost of Abraham Lincoln shows up, who was foreshadowed earlier in the film during the conversation with Fiendish Dr. Wu. It's like, I swear about the ghost of Abraham Lincoln, the black man will be free. And then Abraham Lincoln does show up to help the black man. Anyway, Black Dynamite beats up the First Lady, he beats up Nixon, and then he's like, Nixon, I found the Watergate photos. I know you're a freak. And you better take care of the black community, otherwise I'm leaking all this BDSM shit to the news stations or whatever. It's like, can you dig it? It's like, yeah, I can dig it. I can dig it, Black Dynamite. I can dig it. I can dig it, Black Dynamite. Just, he's just doing the thing. He's doing the Nixon thing. And then Black Dynamite's like, I wonder if that white lady's still in the other room. So he apologizes to Mrs. Nixon. And then Laura shows back up randomly for the first time in like 30 minutes. And then we end the film with like the poster pose. The pose that they used on the poster. With both of them at his legs, at his feet. Just worshiping him like he's some sort of god. Yes, he is. And that's how we end our film. That's how we end our film. Now, obviously, I think that this film is hilarious. What was your guys' take on it?
Oh, I still haven't seen this. This is gonna be my first time going through, so I'll be going in blind. Yeah.
Oh man, this isn't a reaction video. This is a review.
It's all good. I think it's hilarious still. I first saw it back in 2009 when it came out. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, the show didn't exist yet. So when I watched it, I'm just a huge Michael J. White fan. I'm a huge Tommy Davidson fan because of In Living Color. I used to have a crush on Kim Whitley when I was a kid. So I loved her in this movie too. And I just, I watched a lot of blaxploitation films with our dad. So, I kind of got a lot of the references. I got the references to Jim Kelly. I got the references to Fred Williamson. And I just thought overall that they did a really good job, paying homage to it, but also making fun of it at the same time in a way that's like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But even if you hadn't seen it before, then you probably would get some sort of value out of it. And then later on, me and Caleb watched the show together on Adult Swim. And then, like you mentioned, we rewatched it last year just for the hell of it. And it just, Michael J. White is an underrated writer.
Oh no, very underrated. He has really good comedic timing. Obviously, he created this character.
Yeah.
He was initially inspired when he was listening to James Brown. He was listening to James Brown in his car on the radio, and was like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
Huh. So he came up with the concept, but he's like, this, he's a funny guy, and he comes up with things on the fly. He has really good comedic timing. Like the aunt that calls Black Dynamite in the movie, the character's name is Aunt Billy. Michael J. White came up with that name on the spot because while he was writing the scene, one of his friends, Billy, called him.
Well, here's another thing too. a lot of folks don't know it. You might not even know it, Ben, even though you've got a pretty good encyclopedic knowledge of the film industry. When Michael J. White was messing around, sorry, Caleb. When Michael J. White was messing around with voices for Bushido Brown in the episode of the Boondocks. Not the one where they were trying to kidnap Oprah. That was another actor, but like subsequently when he appeared and it was Michael J. White, that voice that he was testing out was around the time when he had already came up with the Black Dynamite character. So even though the characters are completely different, I always kind of like to think that there's like some sort of like alternate multiverse connection between the two because they sound very similar appearance. And then of course, both of them are references to Jim Kelly and a large.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, they're both Jim Kelly. They're both like kung fu black action men.
Exactly.
More so because obviously a leaner character than Black Dynamite.
You just took the words out of my mouth. Exactly.
Yeah. But like that is hilarious. Although obviously, like they sound similar, but obviously, like Black Dynamite has more of like a gruff, more of, like a gruff demeanor, and, like a stronger voice. Meanwhile, Bushido Brown, like he's doing an impression of Jim Kelly for that character.
Exactly.
Which speaking of the Boondocks, while we're on that subject, Cedric Yarborough, who voices both Tom in the Boondocks and Colonel H. Stinkmeaner, he's in this film.
He's in it. Yep.
He plays the character Chocolate Giddy Up, the pimp. Chocolate Giddy Up. And I think he also reprises the role.
Yeah, the show.
He reprises the role in the cartoon.
He reprised them in the cartoon as well.
Yeah, like. I love the character of Chocolate Giddy Up. I think he's my favorite pimp character out of the bunch. I mean, I know like people love Tasty Freeze because obviously he's played by Arsenio Hall.
Yeah,
but
then of course there was also the the Pimp's Ball sort of episode where it was like it was like Pimps and Empires, and then it was Snoop Dogg who was like kind of like the main antagonist. So yeah, they actually do pimp characters really well in that show.
They really do. I loved that episode so much. And especially Snoop Dogg's character, Leroy Van Nuys. He's like, they were like, Leroy Van Nuys, you're alive? It's like, that's right, I'm alive. Like, when my mother gave birth to me and, they threw my ass in that pimp juice after I was born, y'all thought I was dead. And that time when my mother's pimp started beating on her and I tried to stop him and he double pumped me in the chest with a shotgun, y'all thought I was dead. And then when I needed that kidney transplant, and, all the pimps were matching donors, but no one wanted to give me one. And usually I stuck my ass in that box on the ground. Y'all thought I was dead. But guess what? I'm not dead.
Yeah, man. Nah. No, it's just I think the thing that's most fun about the Black Dynamite movie and the show is it's like they're very clearly making commentary, like kind of like on the state of like this country's relationship with like FBA's Foundational Black Americans, but they do it in a way that's like good-natured fun. Like there are some instances like here and there, like the whole, like, he and I used to love the Elvis episode because it was just so scathing. It was like they were not holding back or pulling any punches on that Elvis episode. Yeah.
No, they will not. They were not holding back on that Elvis episode. And, that's what I really love about the show, that they are willing to take it to these places. Like going back to his Ball episode, that episode is a commentary on vaccine distrust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because they have flu vaccine available for all the Black community, but they're making it a requirement so Black Dynamite doesn't trust it. And there's reasons behind that because historically in America, like, the U.S. government has used vaccines to sterilize Black people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't remember. You could probably refresh my memory, but I'm almost certain there was like a reference to the Tuskegee syphilis testing. Like I think there was a reference to that in the episode. There maybe wasn't, but it's all like related in more than just a tangential way of like how we're saying. Even with the COVID vaccines, there was a lot of like distrust because once again, it was just like, oh, well, everybody should take it, but Black people really need to take it. And it's like, I thought this came from China. So
yeah, exactly. Like
we really need to take it.
Yeah. And also don't the Chinese famously hate Black people? Like famously? Don't they have segregated clubs over there?
Yeah.
Don't all the South African Blacks who go to China to escape like South African apartheid end up regretting it? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's definitely it's one of those things to where it's like I think if more folks see Black Dynamite, like both the live action film and the show, they'll kind of maybe understand like the greater significance of like that whole era's influence on where we are today. Like a lot of like slang that you may hear in hip hop, especially like early '80s hip hop. It came from a lot of those guys like Rudy Ray Moore, Richard Pryor, James Brown. Like those guys were the heroes to your Dr. Dre's and to your Slick Ricks and so on and so forth. And it's kind of a trickle down effect because then they influenced the generation from the '90s and so on and so forth for the most part. So I always like watching a lot of those movies. It's like Eddie Murphy's film. The Dolomite film that he made. I forget the name.
Dolomite Is My Name.
Thank you. It's on the tip of my tongue. There are a lot of instances in that movie where it's like they're basically flat out telling you that that style of comedy influenced hip hop. Like there are so many scenes where they're just outright saying it, and it's true.
Yeah, it is absolutely. There's a reason why Rudy Ray Moore is referred to as the Godfather of rap.
The Godfather of rap. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you listen to how he talked. It was like very singy, songy, but it was also very like tough and macho, which is like, okay, those two ingredients basically are, at least once upon a time, that's rap, that's hip hop. So it's the parallels are really dope, and that's why I like all the rapper shout outs that the show had. There are a lot of instances of like rappers coming in and doing cameos, and it was great.
Well, I mean, the coup de grace with that was Chance the Rapper doing Basshead's Delight in the very last.
Yeah.
That had me in tears because I was just like, oh my God, this is perfect.
Yeah.
That is such an obscure reference, and I love it. And I talked about Basshead in my recent video on Dolomite, where I'm fairly certain that Basshead's character was based on the hamburger pimp from Dolomite.
Yeah.
But that hamburger pimp character was very clearly based on Willie from Popeye. There's a chain here.
Yeah. Now,
There's a chain here.
Yeah, like as you know, back in school, Caleb was always super duper serious, which it's a great like little balance that we got going on. That character, that performance by Chance, just straight up broke him. So it's hilarious, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Also, side note, I just love the character Basshead so much. He's so funny. It's like, I'm a stereotypical Basshead from the community. Watch, poof. And then there's the Richard Pryor episode where he's on fire, just running around, and then Paul Mooney is there, who did a lot of the writing for Richard Pryor.
Yeah,
and Paul Mooney's like, oh, okay, we have to shoot him down. It's like, how are you gonna shoot him down? We're gonna use acid, Valium, and white woman saliva. Richard has responded to these things in the past when all else has failed.
Yeah, man.
It's great.
Both the show and the movie are. I guess I'll pose this question to you, Ben. Which are you more of a fan of, the live action film or the animated series?
It's a tough one for me because obviously the animated series holds a special place in my heart because I discovered it when I was like a very young teenager. I binged it so many times.
Yeah.
And it's what got me. It's in a lot of ways it informed my sense of humor. It got me more into blaxploitation, and that's also how I discovered the Black Dynamite movie, obviously. Mm-hmm. But like watching the movie, like it is one of my favorite films, and there's so much about the film that's just it's timed so well with its comedic beats, and it's also it's just also overall it's just a hilarious film.
Yeah,
I cannot stress how funny it is, but it also works in itself as a narrative. Like, I criticized Dolomite recently because I felt like Dolomite had a very loose and simple plot that connected together basically a bunch of bullshit. The movie's basically 90 minutes of dicking around, pretty much. There's a very loose plot. But with Black Dynamite, it's a comedy, like Dolomite's supposed to be. It's an action comedy, but you can track the narrative. It's an unfolding conspiracy that goes to the top. And it all starts with Black Dynamite's brother getting killed, and that pushes him to go from person to person trying to figure out who did it, and that leads him down a chain of events, and it gets more and more ridiculous. It gets progressively more ridiculous, but the plot still functions as a narrative within itself. And moving on from that point, Caleb, Caleb, if I'm understanding this correctly, when I asked you guys to do this, you thought we'd be watching the movie?
Yeah, I thought that we were gonna do like at least watch parts of it and then discuss it, that sort of thing.
Oh man.
I'm so sorry. If you want, what we can do is that after we finish this recording, what we can do is that we can watch the movie, and then we can come back, and we'll just have your commentary on it, and I'll just insert it into the video if you want.
No, it's all good.
I can do that. It wouldn't be a problem. I could just slot it in.
No, I can't time-wise today, but no, I mean, if anything, it's cool being able to hear you guys talk about it and go into depth about, the different, not only just like the references to film history, but also the references to like real life history as well. Mm-hmm. And for what it's worth, I did see the show, so it's kind of like, it is nice. Even then I can think of like, okay, this was something that they referenced from the show. This is something that I noticed in the show. I was watching, I'm like, I feel like I should get this joke. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I hadn't seen the movie yet, so it's like, okay, now I'm understanding where this reference ties into that thing. So yeah.
Well, this is an interesting situation because this actually kind of works out perfectly for me. Even though you haven't seen the movie, this kind of works out perfectly. While I was watching the movie, because I've seen the show so many times, there was so many lines and moments where I'm like, oh, they did this in the show. So let me pull up some for you. I wrote them down.
Oh, go for it.
Also, side note, I have season 1 of the show here on DVD. I'm still looking for season 2 on DVD, but I have season 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through here. Go 45. This is just a point I wanted to bring up. I think Black Dynamite's reputation as a badass who beats people up reads really well in this movie. Because you have a lot of movies where you have a character with a reputation, and their reputation is supposed to precede them, but when you actually see them in action in the movie, it doesn't convey that to the audience at all. It feels like, oh, well, you were propping this guy up. He's not really all that great, but Black Dynamite backs up what people say about him. So yeah. I think that's really interesting.
I think that's aided by the fact that Michael J. White is really about that life. Like he's a legitimate martial artist. He's been there basically his whole life. He works extremely well with like his stunt team and the stunt coordinators, and
Spawn.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The Spawn. So it's like at the end of the day, and he just has that physicality, right? Like you see Michael J. White in anything, and you believe like, yeah, this is somebody who's going to command the room. He's going to command that particular type of respect. So I actually agree with you on that 100%.
Yeah, no, he has the physicality, and he has the seriousness, and he commands respect, and that works for him. And it's funny you bring up Spawn, which I'll probably talk about at some point in the future. They reference Spawn in Black Dynamite the series in the cartoon.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's in the episode where this is gonna be a nightmare editing. It's in the episode where they're filming the Blaxploitation film, where Melvin Van Peebles is filming the Blaxploitation film, and all the black actors get kidnapped by Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier from Raisin in the Sun.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And in that episode, when they defeat Bill Cosby at the end, Black Dynamite says, even if Hollywood did make a black superhero, they'd probably make him a damn hellspawn or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So just a funny thing. Black Dynamite teleports randomly during that fight scene, during that kung fu scene at the beginning. He just teleports back and forth from shot to shot, beating up that one guy. Okay, I already mentioned the Vietnamese boy who they keep referring to as Chinese in the film. In the series, they call him Buku Sal, which just means you're full of shit. But they named the character that. They named the character Buku Sal, which is hilarious. Black Dynamite has an 8-track player in every room of his house. They see in that scene where the CIA agent is telling Black Dynamite to stay out of things. He's saying to Black Dynamite, "We don't need you creating a pool of blood." And Black Dynamite says, "If you tell me who did it, I'll promise I'll just leave a little puddle." They have that line in the show during the Warriors parody episode with all the transvestites when John Wayne Gacy is babysitting the orphans. John Wayne Gacy says, "Listen, kids, I was gonna leave a big pool of blood, but if you make this easy for me, I'll promise I'll just make it a little puddle." So that reference is Caleb. I'm not sure if you remember that episode, but that's a reference to the movie.
No, I do. It basically also did a send up of Home Alone with the little orphans.
Yeah,
just beat up John Wayne Gacy. Yeah,
I'll be back. I gotta use the bathroom. Let me excuse myself.
All right, I can go through the references with Caleb here to pad out the video. Here we go. So I already mentioned the Richard Pryor episode where they're chasing around Basehead because they think Basehead is Richard Pryor. He's on fire, and he's just Basehead is running away from Black Dynamite and company and Paul Mooney, and he's running up fire escapes and running across buildings, like doing some like kind of parkour shit. There's a scene like that exactly in the movie when Black Dynamite is chasing Cream Corn across the fire escapes. That I'm pretty sure visually that is supposed to be a reference to that chase scene in the movie. And also that chase scene has intentional continuity errors because that's obviously a reference to blaxploitation films of the 70s. Black Dynamite is referred to as super in the film, which is hilarious.
That's
just really funny. Here we go. Going back once again to the blaxploitation episode where Melvin Van Peebles is doing stuff. In that episode, Black Dynamite says to Jim Kelly, he yells at Jim Kelly saying, I'm blacker than the ace of spades, blah blah blah. And I'm protecting the community, yada yada. He's yelling in Jim Kelly's face, and he's like, "You better shut the fuck up." When a grown ass man tells you to shut the fuck up. That dialogue exchange, there's some minor changes, but the way the scene is acted is almost exactly like a scene from the movie when he's yelling in the face of one of the black revolutionaries, one of the Black Panthers. And he's saying, "I'm more militant than you and your entire crew put together," yada yada. It's a reference to that. And also, in that scene in the cartoon, Jim Kelly says, "Black Dynamite, I would like to leave your island." That line is not only in Black Dynamite. Black Dynamite says that to fiendish Dr. Wu. He says, "Dr. Wu, I would like to leave your island." But that line is also actually a line that Jim Kelly said in real life, I think in either Enter the Dragon or The Way of the Dragon.
It was Enter the Dragon.
Thank you. Which, yeah. Which, by the way, I just want to talk about this real quick, completely unrelated to Black Dynamite. Enter the Dragon is like one of the only Bruce Lee movies that kept its title in America.
Yeah.
That's weird. I want to bring this up real quick. Yep. So, I have a bunch of the Bruce Lee movies on DVD. I was just looking back at them. So, I've talked to a couple of people about this recently. I just want to bring this up because obviously the Bruce Lee movies inspired Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly inspired Black Dynamite. There's a chain of events here. For those of you who are listening to this who don't know, a bunch of Bruce Lee's movies were retitled in America for some reason. It was different marketing reasons. An example of this would be in 1971, Bruce Lee released a movie called The Big Boss. And when that movie was distributed in America, for some reason they retitled it Fists of Fury for marketing reasons. But then the next year, in 1972, Bruce Lee actually released a different movie called Fist of Fury. And when it was released in America, the studios thought that audiences would get confused, so they retitled the movie The Chinese Connection to tie into The French Connection, which also came out that year. And this leads us to Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon is the movie Bruce Lee made right before Enter the Dragon, but the movie was released after Bruce Lee's death. It was released posthumously. And in America, Way of the Dragon came out after Enter the Dragon. So when it was released in America, it was retitled Return of the Dragon. So just something I wanted to bring up because I think it's weird and a little annoying, but also kind of funny. But yeah, I would like to leave your island. I'm back to it. You see, sudden flashbacks in the orphanage because the orphans are on crack. Here we go. There's a scene in the Black Dynamite animated series where Black Dynamite is trying to take down Soul Train because Don Cornelius is like the godfather of music on TV.
Yeah.
And he's rivaling against the guy who hosts American Bandstand. What was his name? Dick Clark. It was Dick Clark and Don Cornelius, DC and DC. And in the episode, you see Black Dynamite staring at a repairman who's walking away. And the repairman's jacket says, Soul Train Scramble Board Repair Services Incorporated. And then Black Dynamite says, Soul Train is a sole proprietorship, and the repairman cannot incorporate even if they wanted to. It'd be a subsidiary at best. Which is a hilarious corporate structuring joke. But then after that, Black Dynamite says, repairmen don't wear alligator shoes. That's a line from this movie, because when Black Dynamite shoots the donut mascot, he says, I knew he wasn't a real donut mascot because donut mascots don't wear alligator shoes. Side note, I actually own a pair of alligator shoes.
I'm not surprised.
You also have a cap with a feather in it as well?
I do. I lost the feather, but I still have the cap.
It's not the same. We gotta get you a new feather.
So you need some alligator shoes in your life. You need that. But that's a reference. The alligator shoes thing. That's a reference to the movie. Also, side note. Apparently, Michael J. White hates mascots. So in every movie he writes a scene where a mascot gets killed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, don't know why. Anyway, what's next? Nope. Obviously the pimp council scene in this movie is a reference to Willie Dynamite. Captain Kangaroo Pimp. There's a character called Captain Kangaroo Pimp who also appears in the animated series. He appears in the Players Ball episode. And obviously it's because he looks like Captain Kangaroo. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a scene where Michael J. White breaks character. It's right after they clean up the community, right before he goes on that date with Laura, where it's revealed that he's the mother of those girls. It's right before that. He says, "Oh yeah, the community cleaned up," and there's a scene where Michael J. White forgets that he's not supposed to smile, and he smiles, and then he goes back to frowning, which is hilarious. I already mentioned the racist cop thing. The scene in the movie where they do, the 14 degrees of separation, melt in your mouth, Mars Candy Company, blah, 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 this, Athena, yada, yada, yada. They do that exact same scene in the animated show. It's probably the most overt reference to the movie, frankly. They do that scene in the episode where Bullhorn becomes a star. And in that episode, what happens is that they're trying to figure out who is killing all the black stars in LA. And they get a blackboard and they're all like, oh, wait, marshmallows. What are marshmallows made of? They're made out of gelatin and blah, blah, blah. They go down the chain of events and then they realize, wait, what's the only Panthers that we know that aren't pink? Black. And what does that mean? The Black Panthers and the Ku Klux Klan killed Ringo. Yeah. It's the exact same scene from the movie, just with different context. So, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Lincoln, Kung Fu Island. Oh yeah, obviously Fiendish Doctor Wu also appears in the animated show. He appears in the first official episode, not the pilot, but the first official episode with Michael Jackson, because he has that League of Ninjas. Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, apparently, the actor that plays Fiendish Doctor Wu, he was the villain in that Jackie Chan Owen Wilson movie, Shanghai Noon.
Oh, Shanghai Noon.
Yeah.
Yep. Same guy. Oh, wow. Let's see. Yeah, I already mentioned the moon thing. He threw that ship before he left the moon. O.J. Simpson episode. It was, I threw that ship before I walked in the room. Which apparently that scene itself was inspired by an encounter that Michael J. White had with Ice-T, the rapper. Mm. Apparently Ice-T did that once. He just jumped on a table and said that.
I can dig it.
That's like an Ice-T thing.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Nixon being the villain in this movie. Obviously, I feel like that could be a reference to Dolomite, because in Dolomite, the mayor of LA is the villain, but the mayor of LA is supposed to be like a Nixon crony. So that could be a reference to Dolomite, but it also could just be the fact that Nixon, was the default antagonist in a lot of movies that came out in the 70s, or movies that take place in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which, Watergate and all that. And obviously Nixon appears in the animated show. And it's so funny because, we already talked about this, that this animated show is very likely a prequel to the movie for a lot of reasons. Primarily because all the characters in the show die in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's most likely a prequel. But, we see this in the show that Nixon is like a main antagonist character, and he hates Black Dynamite. So, assuming that the show is a prequel, like, the events of this movie following that would be like, okay, the reason Nixon did this is just because he hates Black Dynamite that much that he's like, I'm going to shrink every black man's dick in America because I hate Black Dynamite that much. And, that's also goes along with his, like, the consistency of his character and, like, the weird plots that he gets up to. It's like, oh, I'll drop the N-bomb on the black community, or, oh, I'll feed black people to sharks. And, then Samuel Jackson will teach Black Dynamite how to swim before he gets eaten by a shark like he did in Deep Blue Sea. It's exactly the same as Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. And Samuel Jackson. Tasty Freeze. I'm actually dressed as Tasty Freeze. I have a Tasty Freeze costume. It's the animated version though. It's not the live action one. Yep. Let me see. Chocolate Giddy Up. Yep. Drunk Cherry Cup number 1. Yeah, I think that's everything. That's everything I've written down. But no, I love Black Dynamite. I love the animated show. I love the movie. It's funny that we've talked about both in this video, which is hilarious. Yeah, Caleb, you should watch the movie. It's good. It's a good movie. It's on Tubi right now. You can watch it for free.
Oh, word.
Like right now, as of recording, it's on Tubi right now. It might not be there in a month. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, you could watch it there. It's a great movie. But like I said, I think that this movie is great. It's a hilarious parody of blaxploitation films, but none of it feels mean-spirited. It does touch on important issues. Obviously, the show does it more, but it does touch on important issues like alcoholism, for instance. The movie deals with like how politicians sort of roll over and betray their constituents because they do things like endorse like malt liquor, like an alcohol, a very hard alcohol, which can contribute to violence in people. In this case, it shrinks their dicks, but that's obviously a commentary on alcoholism. Black Dynamite gets involved with a girl who sort of sets him straight on the right path. It's him finally settling down and maybe leaving his pimping days behind. It's a narrative that works within itself while still being a parody, and that's a very hard balancing act. Like that, it's an impressive feat that the film does. And obviously you can develop an even deeper appreciation for it if you're familiar with like all the references that the film points to. Like the fact that every time Black Dynamite throws a kick or punch, he says "Sweet," which is something that Jim Kelly did.
Yep.
That's overtly something that Jim Kelly did.
Yep.
Yeah. It's all hilarious. I could talk about Black Dynamite all day. I really could.
No, I think it's and again the cool thing is like, if you're comparing Black Dynamite and Dolomite, it's like, Black Dynamite is postmodern, so it's like this is only possible when you're having a self-reflexive look on something. And I think now it's so interesting. Now I feel like we're actually leaving the postmodern era and we're trying to get back to like sincerity. And it's like, no, please don't make fun of things. But like you're saying, it's like if you're not being mean-spirited about it, I think that's when postmodernism is real. Like when you do both, it's like this is kind of funny, but we love it anyway because it's a little cheesy or because it's a little janky. That's what.
Well, it's tongue in cheek. It's playing it tongue in cheek, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I've talked about that in a lot of my videos, like recently, and I've also talked about this in my personal life. The fact that earnestness has not been around for like 25 to 30 years. Everyone has been consistently tainted with irony for decades now, and it's because of postmodernism. And obviously postmodernism started in Europe in like the 70s before it came over to America in like the late 80s, early 90s. But it really just infected every segment of entertainment. And on the one hand, there is a value in like taking a reflexive look at things, like sort of being meta and, being self-referential about what things are and what it is. But it can also be grating because it's like, well, what are you doing here? But the interesting thing about Black Dynamite is that it's not grating. Like you said, it's not It's not mean-spirited. It's funny. It pokes fun at things, but nothing. It doesn't feel like it's making a point. It's not satire. It's not satire. It's not trying to make a point to the viewer. It's just, it's funny and it does have some things to say, but that's not the focus of the narrative. And, and I'm actually looking forward to the fact that, entertainment now is sort of shifting back into sincerity. I feel like we've been too ironic, that, we've been too insincere. But I'm excited for the fact that we are shifting back more into sincerity now. Because, that means that we'll get, better content that isn't just up its own ass. But still, like, comedies like Black Dynamite remind us that, we don't need to take everything seriously. You can have a laugh every now and then. And just because you're making fun of something doesn't mean you don't love it. Like, I think a great example of this would be like the movie Galaxy Quest, for instance. It's a Star Trek parody. And, they make fun of nerds. The movie starts off at like a fan convention. But like none of it ever feels harsh. It's all like it's all made in jest, and it's in good spirit. And Black Dynamite, I feel like, is in that same vibe. It's a great movie. I think people should see it. It's probably the best film that came out in 2009. Probably. Like what else came out in 2009?
Man, you're making me go back. I don't think Transformers came out in 2009.
Transformers 2 came out in 2009.
Yeah. Second one,
Revenge of the Fallen.
Watchmen came out in 2009, which I really enjoyed.
Captain America?
No, that was
that was 2011. There were no Marvel movies that came out in 2009. Actually, there was no Marvel movies that came out.
Yeah, because Iron Man came out in 2008, and then the sequel didn't come out until 2010.
Yeah, and the Hulk came out in 2008. That same.
Yeah. Yeah. Brothers with Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal came out in 2009. Really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, you're really making me go back. I'm trying to recall without hopping on IMDb.
I mean, Tron Legacy, I think, came out in 2009.
No, that was 2010.
Yeah,
you're right.
That came out when I was a senior in high school. That's why I remember it, because everybody kept talking about it.
Yeah, really good soundtrack.
Daft Punk.
Yep. But Black Dynamite definitely is one of the better movies that came out in 2009 for sure. I don't disagree with you on that. Yeah, I mean, I actually saw it on a whim. I remember I was just kind of scrolling through the channel, and then I just immediately was drawn to the music. The soundtrack for Black Dynamite's really good. And then, I didn't have anything else going on, so I was like, yeah, let me check it out. One of the best movies I've ever seen. And then the show, naturally, I just was kind of like, oh, there's a show. It kind of low-key looks like, it could exist in the Boondocks universe, like low-key. So that drew me in, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the show has like an amazing like comic book art style. Just
exactly.
It's a lot of shading.
Yeah.
And like I said, I fell in love with the show. I've even dressed as the animated version of Black Dynamite. Jacket, off-white shirt, red pants, and I even drew all the shaded lines on my face.
Yeah. Star Trek came out in 2009 as well.
Oh yeah, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Yeah.
R2-D2 appears in that movie?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I've never seen it actually, so I don't know.
Yeah, R2-D2 appears for like one scene in that movie. He's like in the wreckage of like a ship that's orbiting the planet Vulcan.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then the Cloverfield monster allegedly shows up on the ice planet. There's allegedly a Cloverfield reference, and Cloverfield is like sacred to me, so I'm just like, where? And I still don't see it.
I forgot. Did J.J. Abrams direct Cloverfield, or am I thinking of Super 8?
No, he directed Super 8. He was an executive producer on Cloverfield, and I think Matt Reeves directed Cloverfield, and then Drew Goddard wrote it, I think. It's like the holy trinity of like sci-fi people worked on that thing.
Oh, Matt Reeves is an amazing director. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is one of my favorite films.
Oh, District 9 came out in 2009 as well.
Oh, District 9. Oh, and also the movie 9 came out. September 9th, 2009, the movie 9 came out.
No, and then X-Men Origins Wolverine came out in 2009.
That's the best
one. One of the best comedies I've ever seen in my life. One of the best comedies I've ever seen with my brother. We saw that with our dad around his birthday.
The movie is so funny that they took the funny man and sewed his mouth shut.
It's a laugh factory, bro.
When Wolverine eats the ladder by swiping it.
Yeah,
Actually makes me cry laughing. I'm just like, what?
So the scene that broke me and Caleb was so for the most part we were still taking the movie seriously because it was like, oh, they're gonna show us. I mean, we read comics, so we already know the origin story, but it's like, yeah, of course I want to see the movie version. The scene that made me stop taking it seriously was when he first used the claws when the family took him in
at the farm,
and it was at the farm. Yeah, after he survived that encounter with oh boy, whose name I can't remember right now, but he's a good character too. And he used the claws for the first. Just how off the CG looked. It wasn't even bad. It's just it looked off. And it was just something about that scene that just broke the whole, like the whole audience basically stopped taking the movie seriously because of that scene.
Yeah,
they're too shiny. They don't blend in with the aesthetic.
Thank you. Yeah,
too shiny, and then they didn't match. Like they don't look like they could come out of his hands.
Exactly.
It looked like it was like they photoshopped them in between
his knuckles. Yeah,
it's a weird thing because he had practical ones on set.
Exactly.
He wore practical ones. I don't know.
And then you think about the first X-Men movie, and it's like, how do those claws look better? And that came out in the year 2000. Meanwhile, this came out in 2009, and those claws look better.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. How does Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean look better than any number of CGI movies that come out today?
Yeah, it's insanity. Like they really went hard on with Davy Jones in those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball on CGI. We trailed off. We were trying to figure out other movies that came out in 2009.
I know. Good year for movies, apparently.
Yeah, but this was an interest. It's an interesting. It's actually funny that Caleb, you haven't seen the movie yet. It's an I'm interested in your perspective because obviously you've listened to me describe the plot and you've listened to me and Micah sort of pick through what the movie's about. What's your take on our commentary, regarding the film?
No, I mean, your take on it is, if anything, it's it hits close to home because back when we would watch Blaxploitation and kung fu movies with our dad, but Micah was a sentient human being and I was a baby. Meanwhile, so the interesting thing is all the continuities, errors, and things like that. It's just oh, this is just how movies work. People just teleport.
Boom mic just dips in the screen just like that.
Yeah, this is all intentional. And so It wasn't until I got older where I was just oh wow, there's so many different things going on. You can see one of the cameramen over here and there.
Yeah.
So this will be interesting for me again of all right, now I'm going in with this knowledge of, hey, this is how it's supposed to be. And it's going to be a nice little send up to all these movies that are near and dear to me.
I am sincerely interested in your reaction on it. And going back to Blaxploitation for a minute, you talked about boom mic. Micah, you talked about boom mics going in.
Yeah.
So I'm about to play 6 Degrees of Separation with you guys. So obviously in a bunch of cheap movies, you saw boom mics going in. Mm-hmm. One of those cheap movies where you see the boom mic on screen is Plan 9 from Outer Space by Ed Wood, directed by Ed Wood.
Okay.
You see that in a scene where they're flying, the pilots are flying, and they're on a sound stage, and you see a shadow go by. You actually see the shadow of the boom mic. And Plan 9 from Outer Space was actually an inspiration on Black Dynamite, particularly the dialogue. Because if you listen to the dialogue in Plan 9 from Outer Space, they use the same word in a sentence 3 times in a bunch of the dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's they don't diversify the dialogue when they're writing it.
Yeah, it's very repetitive. I know what you mean.
It's very repetitive. And they did that in the script for Black Dynamite. They did that intentionally with certain scenes where they just kept using the same words so many times. In the scene when Black Dynamite's not the orphans, I used to be an orphan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that pivots to a flashback, and it's you don't got no mommy, you don't got no daddy, you an orphan. It's intentionally repetitive, and that's intentionally meant to be a reference to Ed Wood and Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
So, boom, 6 Degrees of Separation.
It's because you made the claim earlier that you felt that Black Dynamite was quite possibly the best movie of 2009, and I just thought of a very obvious one. I can't believe I forgot it, but Inglourious Basterds came out in 2009 as well.
Yeah. Okay, this is going to be fun. I was thinking about this today. I think Black Dynamite is better than Inglourious Basterds.
Really?
Wow.
Know what? That's not that radical of a take because he and we've discussed with other film or cinephiles, film lovers, we both or I don't know if you still feel this way, but once upon a time, we both liked the Speed Racer movie by the Wachowskis more than The Dark Knight. And that was never a popular opinion. I still feel that way, by the way.
I mean, the Speed Racer movie is an underrated film. I feel. I think The Dark Knight is better, but the Speed Racer movie is an underrated movie.
Yeah,
like I think it's actually really good. I think it's actually really good. Like I think, I mean, it's better than most of the Wachowskis movies.
Since the first Matrix, hands down.
It was like lightning in a bottle, and then a whole bunch of other confusion, and then it's like, oh wait, and then this movie that is honestly, there's nothing quite frankly like it.
Yeah, at least not in no way.
Yeah.
But I think Black Dynamite is better than Inglourious Basterds, and I'm saying that as someone who watched both movies recently. I watched Inglourious Basterds 2 months ago.
Okay. Well, what makes you hold that opinion?
Well, let me for real quick. Let me pull this up because I have the DVD right here in my shelf.
Okay, yeah, I got mine too over in the corner.
Man, it's stuck under my copy of Jigoku from 1960. Come on. Too much physical media. That's my problem. There we go. Boom, Inglourious Basterds.
Yep.
So, I think Black Dynamite is better than this movie because despite the fact that Black Dynamite is convoluted, which is intentional, it's intentionally convoluted, it has a much narrower plot and better focus. Inglourious Basterds has the problem that most Tarantino movies have. And I know Tarantino is your favorite filmmaker. I know that.
Spike Lee's my favorite filmmaker.
You said in college Tarantino was your favorite filmmaker.
No. A lot of people get that confused. I said Tarantino's my favorite screenwriter, but Spike Lee has been my favorite filmmaker. Yeah, Spike Lee's been my favorite filmmaker for most of my life. Him and Martin Scorsese.
Well, I know for a fact you've read Tarantino's screenplays, so you'll understand what I'm about to tell you.
I read all of them that I could find.
This movie has the exact same problem that most of his movies have, being that it's written like a book.
Yeah, 100%.
And that works for some of his movies. And Tarantino's a great filmmaker. He's made some of the greatest movies ever. Literally. That's not an exaggeration. He has.
Yeah.
But with this movie, its narrative is very much structured like a book in the sense that you just have diverging plot lines that converge because they have to. And in a book, you can kind of just do whatever you want, but in a film, there's certain narrative conventions that you have to obey. I love how this just turned into an Inglourious Basterds review. In Inglourious Basterds, we start the film with Christoph Waltz's character, coming in, and he bugs this farming family. He said, okay, we know that there's Jews under your floorboards. If you give them to us, we'll leave you alone. He shoots the family. One girl runs away. And then we pivot back to that girl. This girl is basically the main character of the movie. And, she runs a movie theater, and, she's getting bugged by Daniel Brunel, Daniel Brunel from Goodbye Lenin, and I guess Captain America Civil War as well. And, she's the main character, ostensibly. She's the focus of the film. We don't meet the bastards, I think, until maybe 20 minutes into the movie.
We do, but we meet them before even we see the scene where she's the theater owner. So, literally,
it's a split focus issue. We focus so much on her because she's ostensibly the main character. The bastards, it's false advertising. The bastards fall into the background of the story. And so much of the movie is all okay, these bastards, we're trying to track down, where the Nazis are having this big meeting so we can get them all. And obviously you have that great scene where Michael Fassbender and these and the other bastards are in a bar and there's a big shootout, yada yada. But that doesn't tie into the main narrative at all. The bastards can be taken completely out of the story. The same result would have happened. The girl would have still burned down the theater where Hitler and the other three major Nazis were, and the exact same result would have occurred. Exact same results. The bastards have very little impact on the plot. It's like the Indiana Jones issue with Raiders of the Lost Ark, except it's worse. The bastards have no influence on the story at all. The focus is on the girl. The bastards are just there because they're side characters like they would be in a book.
It's interesting. Never thought about it that way.
And that is why I think Black Dynamite... Where's my DVD copy of Black Dynamite? Here we go. That's why I think that Black Dynamite is better than Inglourious Basterds.
I hope that
I don't hate Inglourious Basterds. I think it's a good. I think it's a good movie, but I don't think it's up there. I don't think it's one of Tarantino's best. So a lot of people think it's one of Tarantino's best. I don't think so. I think Yeah, I think Pulp Fiction's up there. Obviously, the Kill Bill movies are great, particularly Kill Bill Volume 1. Django Unchained is amazing. I think Django Unchained is a great movie.
Mm.
I think Inglourious Bastards, it's not on the same level of Death Proof, but it's close.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's interesting. I don't necessarily see it the same way, but that's a conversation we can get into. Like, if you want to do a future collaboration about that brother's films, I'm all for it. I've seen all of them multiple times, but no, I just thought that was an interesting way to kind of really promote Black Dynamite in a way that a lot of people who, I mean, let's keep it where Caleb said it very well in the beginning, but it's like, I think doing stuff like this is good because a lot of these really good movies that are made by non-white filmmakers just, for the most part, never get seen.
No,
They're
they
really
never
good.
get.
Yeah, they're really good. So doing something like this is great. I mean, we're working on some things too, in a similar vein of like, hey, this is a movie I know most film students have not seen. Like when we first got to Cal State Long Beach, I remember we watched Spike Lee's, many people's opinion, his best film, Do the Right Thing, and I basically was the only person in the class who'd seen it. And this is a class of like 30-something students. But by the end of it, they were all like, how have I never seen this movie before? And I'm like, because it's not a Christopher Nolan movie. Like, it's not it's not just because it's old. Like, 8.5 is older than Do the Right Thing. I know all you guys have seen that. So it's interesting,
Yeah, they haven't, and they need to. And I'll probably do more reviews like this in the future. Obviously, Black History Month comes around every year, so I'll have opportunity. But like, there's movies I want to review that are lesser known from like Black voices or Black filmmakers, and I'm not even talking about in a political sense. I'm talking about in a cultural sense. These are different stories, and I'm interested in them.
Yeah.
Like there's a great movie that came out in 2018 called Blind Spotting that no one's seen.
I have not seen it.
It's a great movie. It takes place in Oakland. It's about a black guy who's on probation. And he keeps coming across a cop. He keeps thinking about a cop. He has trauma because he saw a cop shoot an unarmed guy. So he has like PTSD, like hallucinations throughout the entire movie of this cop keep showing up. In the meantime, he also
Is Mahershala Ali in this movie, by any chance?
I don't remember. Let me check. I'll just check real quick.
No, go for it, because I still have not seen it, but that sounds familiar.
Blind Spotting.
Yeah.
It's David Diggs.
Oh yeah. Okay. Got it. No, he's a good filmmaker too, actually. But no, I have not seen that movie.
It's a really good movie. He keeps having these PTSD visions and like flashes of like this shooting that he saw on this cop's face. And on top of that, he's on probation himself, so he has like his own issues with the community. And there's also like a conflict in the film regarding like, how he integrates back into society, despite the fact that he has a record now. Yeah. And also, it is his fault. It's not one of those situations where he was just, arrested because he was a black man. Like, he actually, he assaulted someone. That's why he went to prison. Yeah. He assaulted someone. And, people are all like, okay, you're being integrated back into society. And his old girl is all like, are you going to take responsibility for yourself? It's a very interesting film. And no one saw it because I think it came out, the same month as Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah. Well, we did see that one. That was an experience.
Yeah. So, no, there's movies out there that I want to talk about that, and that's the whole point of my channel. I talk about movies people haven't seen.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Which is awesome. Yeah. I remember when you were talking about it when we were still in school, I was like, that's a good idea. So, yeah, keep it up, man. Keep fighting the good fight, basically.
Thank you. I have so many great plans ahead, and it's going to be something. We'll see how people respond. But that's it. But yeah. Anywho, so yeah, that's our thoughts on Black Dynamite, the movie and the show, I guess. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
I mean, once again, just thank you for even reaching out to us. I mean, when I got the message, I was so excited because it's like, well, one, we haven't seen each other since we all saw Civil War together last year. So this was a good, and I mean, you guys have invited us to see things since then, but it's just, work schedules. But no, thank you for inviting me and my brother. You've always been a real down-to-earth guy, real fun to be around, and you really care about movies. You're not one of those guys who's just trying to, have a YouTube channel that blows up or something. Like, you actually do care, and I think that's valuable for for a lot of people who are, film students or have an interest in it. It's good to see people who are like really into it. So this has been fun, man. Thanks for having us on again.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you so much. Caleb, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you've ever talked about any of the scripts that you've like wrote or working on back in college, but just ever since you let me, we were assigned to read each other's scripts, and you wrote that Ginger War story. I was just like, this dude has a very interesting way of viewing the world and viewing storytelling, and I know he's going to do something really awesome with it. And I feel like this is a really good way how you can just like use that same creativity on your channel, and I really appreciate you invite me and Micah to help out this episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hopefully I can hopefully I can like produce that script at some point in the future. Obviously, like I need to rewrite it. That was a first draft. Like, Ernest Hemingway said, the first draft of everything is shit, which is true. But like that is a story I was interested in at the time, and I want to see like, now that I'm more coherent and I've experienced now, like if I can improve it. So we'll see what the future bears for all of us. But yeah. So yeah, that was our review of Black Dynamite. I hope all of you watching enjoyed it. If you've gotten this far, please feel free to subscribe if you're feeling generous. You can also follow me on Instagram or Letterboxd if you want to hear more of my film takes. Micah, Caleb, is there any place that you want the people to follow you guys?
Not yet. We're actually currently in the process of, you see our name, BB Productions. We're currently in the process of actually kind of finalizing some things on the business end. But trust me, once we kind of get the ball rolling on our end, I'd like to extend the favor back to you and have you on for something that we do. And I guess maybe at that point, it'd be a nice melding of worlds. It's like you have your community, and then ideally we'd have something going on too.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. So that's it. Guess we will see you all later.
Yeah, zip it up and zip it out.
Bye, everyone, zip it out. We're out.
Press out.
Yeah, we're rolling out. Let's move out. Move out. Move out.
Peace, Ben.
Well, thanks for having us.
Well, Black History Month has come to a close, and what better way to finish it off than a new entry in my raffle. As I've said in previous videos, I'm doing a cumulative giveaway for when I reach my first 500 subscribers. So every few videos, I'll be adding a new piece of merchandise to a pot that will slowly grow over time, and once I reach my first 500, I will give that pot away. So this week, to commemorate Black Dynamite and celebrate an alcohol that doesn't shrink your dick, I have this Colt 45 patch. This patch actually features Billy D. Williams' face on it, as well as printing for his signature, and his famous slogan, "It works every time." So, if you would like to be entered in my raffle and have the opportunity to win this patch, as well as the other merchandise that has accumulated thus far, all you have to do is comment on this video and subscribe to my channel. I will announce the winner when I reach my first 500 subscribers. Best of luck to you all.